I was standing in my kitchen watching the Weather Channel predict the worst blizzard to hit Minnesota in 20 years when I heard the knock on my door that would change everything. Through the frosted window, I could see a woman in a puffy pink coat holding a clipboard, her face already twisted into an expression of righteous indignation. I knew exactly who she was before I even opened the door. "Mr. Thompson, I presume?" she asked, not waiting for confirmation. "I'm Patricia Morrison, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. We need to discuss your truck." The wind was already picking up, sending snow devils swirling across my driveway. The forecast had predicted the storm would hit by noon, and it was already 11. I had spent the morning making sure my plow attachment was properly secured to my truck, checking the hydraulics and preparing to help clear the neighborhood streets once the worst of it passed. I had done this for the past 3 winters without issue. "What about my truck?" I asked, already knowing this conversation was going nowhere good. Patricia consulted her clipboard with the kind of theatrical flourish that suggested she had rehearsed this moment. According to HOA bylaws, Section 12, Paragraph 4, commercial vehicles are not permitted to be parked in driveways or visible from the street. Your truck, with that unsightly plow attachment, clearly violates this regulation. I looked past her at my Ford F-350, sitting exactly where it had sat for the past 3 years. The plow attachment gleamed even in the overcast light, freshly maintained and ready to go. "That's not a commercial vehicle. That's my personal truck. I use the plow to help clear the neighborhood roads." "The presence of commercial equipment makes it a commercial vehicle," Patricia said, her voice taking on that particular tone that suggested she had absolute confidence in her interpretation of rules that probably said nothing of the sort. "I have already contacted a towing company. They will be here within the hour to remove your vehicle." During a blizzard, I could not believe what I was hearing. "You're trying to tow my truck during a blizzard, the same truck I use to plow the roads so people like you can get to work." "The rules apply regardless of weather conditions, Mr. Thompson. Perhaps this will teach you to follow the regulations that everyone else manages to obey without issue." She turned on her heel, nearly slipping on the ice forming on my front steps, and marched back to her Mercedes SUV. I stood there for a moment, watching her drive away, before pulling out my phone. I called my neighbor, Derek Chen, who had lived in Meadowbrook Estates for 15 years and had served on the HOA board before Patricia took over 2 years ago. "Derek, did you know Patricia is trying to tow my truck?" "What? When? Right now. She just left my house. Said it violates the commercial vehicle restriction." Derek let out a long sigh. "She has been on a power trip lately. Last month she tried to fine the Johnsons for having their trash cans visible from the street on a non-collection day. The cans were behind their fence. She stood on a ladder to see them. What do? Let me call Michael Rodriguez. He's still on the board and he hates this kind of thing. In the meantime, you might want to document everything. Take pictures, save any communications. If she is really calling a tow truck during a blizzard, that's just insane." I spent the next 20 minutes photographing my truck from every angle, documenting the time, and reviewing my copy of the HOA bylaws. The commercial vehicle section was vague at best, and I was confident my truck did not qualify. Personal vehicles with occasional commercial use were explicitly exempted, and I had never used my truck for any business purpose. The snow was falling steadily now, thick flakes that were already beginning to accumulate. The wind had picked up significantly, and visibility was dropping fast. I was about to call Derek back when a flatbed tow truck appeared at the end of my driveway. The driver sat there for a moment, wipers working overtime to clear the windshield, before slowly pulling up behind my truck. I grabbed my coat and headed outside, the cold hitting me like a physical force. The driver was already out of his cab, a tall man in his 40s wearing a heavy Carhartt jacket and a worried expression. He was looking at my truck, then at the sky, then back at my truck. "You Clay Thompson?" he asked. "That's me. Got a call from your HOA to tow this truck." Lady sounded real insistent about it. He walked around to the front, stopped when he saw the plow attachment and let out a low whistle. "That's a Boss V plow, 9 foot, 9.5. The driver crouched down, examining the attachment with the kind of appreciation that only comes from professional experience. "You do commercial plowing?" "No, just the neighborhood. I help clear the roads after storms so people can get around." He stood up, brushing snow from his knees, and looked me straight in the eye. "Your HOA president really wants me to tow this truck. Right now, during this." He gestured at the rapidly deteriorating weather conditions. "She offered to double my usual fee." "She did?" "Yeah. I told her I would come out and assess the situation." He walked around the truck again, checking the tires, the hitch, the plow. "Here is the thing. I have lived in Minnesota my whole life, seen a lot of storms. This one is going to be bad, real bad. And you have got a truck with a plow on it, sitting in your driveway, ready to help people. That's the plan. Your HOA president told me this was a illegally parked commercial vehicle. But I am looking at residential plates. I am seeing a personal truck with a plow attachment. And I am thinking about my mom who lives 3 blocks from here and might need someone to clear her driveway so the ambulance can get through if something happens." He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of my truck. "I am going to document that I came out here, assessed the vehicle, and determined it does not meet the criteria for an unauthorized tow. The vehicle is legally registered, properly parked on private property, and the owner is present and non-consenting." "Thank you," I said, genuinely relieved. "No, thank you. My mom's address is 847 Birchwood Lane. If you get a chance after the storm, her driveway is a nightmare to shovel." He grinned, climbed back into his truck, and carefully backed out of my driveway. I was about to head inside when Patricia's Mercedes came screaming around the corner, nearly fishtailing in the accumulating snow. She parked at the curb and practically leaped out of the vehicle. "Where is he going?" she demanded, pointing at the departing tow truck. "He was supposed to remove your vehicle." He determined there was no legal basis for the tow. Patricia's face went red, a remarkable achievement given the cold. "I am the HOA president. When I say a vehicle needs to be towed, it gets towed. That's how this works." "Actually, that's not how any of this works," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "My truck is legally registered and parked on my own property. The HOA bylaws do not prohibit personal vehicles with plow attachments. We will see about that." She pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling on the screen in the cold. "I am calling the police. You are in violation of HOA regulations, and I will have you arrested if necessary. For parking my truck on my own property." She ignored me, speaking rapidly into her phone. I could not hear what she was saying over the wind, but her body language suggested it was not going well. After a few minutes, she ended the call with a vicious jab at the screen. "The police said they will not respond to HOA disputes during the blizzard," she said, somehow making this sound like a personal failing on my part. "But this is not over. I will have that truck removed, and I will fine you for every day it remains in violation. You do what you need to do, Patricia. I am going to spend the day helping people." The storm hit hard around 2 in the afternoon. By 4, we had already received 8 inches of snow with no sign of stopping. I spent the time monitoring the weather, checking in with neighbors, and making sure my truck was ready to go. Derek called around 3 to tell me the HOA board had held an emergency phone meeting and voted 4-1 to suspend Patricia's authority to call for vehicle removals without board approval. Patricia had been the only dissenting vote. By 6, the snow had stopped falling, but the wind was still brutal. Drifts 3 feet high had formed across most of the roads in Meadowbrook Estates. I bundled up, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and headed out to my truck. The engine turned over smoothly, and the plow responded perfectly to the controls. I started at the main entrance and worked my way through the neighborhood systematically. It was hard work. The snow was heavy and wet, perfect for packing, terrible for moving. But the truck handled it beautifully, the plow cutting through drifts and pushing snow to the sides of the road. I worked through the night, taking breaks every few hours to warm up and drink coffee. People came out of their houses to wave and thank me. Someone left a plate of cookies on their mailbox with a note that said, "For our neighborhood hero." Around midnight, I was plowing Birchwood Lane when I spotted number 847. The driveway was completely buried, drifts reaching nearly to the garage door. I made a few passes, clearing it as cleanly as I could, and was about to move on when an older woman appeared at the front door. She waved, and I lowered my window. "Are you Clay?" she called out. "Yes, madam." "My son Jimmy called me. He drove the tow truck. Thank you so much for this." "Can I make you some coffee? Hot chocolate?" "I am good, thank you. Just want to get the neighborhood cleared." "You're a good man. The world needs more people like you." I finished the neighborhood around 3 in the morning. Every street was passable, every driveway accessible. I was exhausted but satisfied. When I finally pulled back into my own driveway, I noticed a piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. I got out, grabbed it, and unfolded it under my porch light. It was a citation from the HOA. $500 for maintaining a commercial vehicle on residential property. It was dated from the previous day before the storm, but had apparently been placed on my truck while I was out plowing. I was too tired to be angry. I went inside, showered, and fell into bed. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. It was Rachel Martinez, one of my neighbors from 4 houses down. "Clay, have you seen the neighborhood Facebook group?" "I do not really do Facebook," I admitted. "You need to look at this. Patricia is trying to organize a special meeting to have you removed from the neighborhood." I sat up, suddenly very awake. "What?" She posted about an hour ago. "She is claiming you violated multiple HOA regulations, refused a lawful order to remove your vehicle, and interfered with official HOA business. She is calling for an emergency meeting tonight to vote on forcing you to sell your house." "She cannot do that." "Can she do that?" "I have no idea, but she seems to think she can. The post has about 60 comments already, and most people are defending you, but some of Patricia's friends are backing her up." After we hung up, I called Derek again. He was already aware of the situation. "Michael and I have been on the phone all morning," he said. "Patricia is completely out of control. She never got board approval for this meeting. She is just announcing it unilaterally. Can she force me to sell my house?" "No, absolutely not. HOAs have the power to fine homeowners and, in extreme cases, place liens on properties for unpaid fines. But they cannot force a sale just because someone violated a parking rule. She is either completely ignorant of how HOAs actually work, or she is hoping you do not know your rights." "So what do I do?" "Come to the meeting. Bring documentation. We will fight this." I spent the day preparing. I printed copies of the HOA bylaws, highlighted the relevant sections, and prepared a timeline of events. I also reached out to several neighbors who had specifically thanked me for plowing their streets, asking if they would be willing to speak on my behalf. Everyone I contacted agreed immediately. The meeting was scheduled for 7 at the community center. I arrived at 6:45 to find the parking lot already full. Apparently, the entire neighborhood had turned out for this. I walked into the main room to find it packed with people, standing room only. Patricia sat at a table at the front, flanked by 2 other board members who both looked deeply uncomfortable. Derek caught my eye from the side of the room and gave me an encouraging nod. Michael Rodriguez was sitting at the main table, separated from Patricia by an empty chair. The board secretary, Jennifer Walsh, was frantically typing on a laptop, apparently trying to keep up with the chaos. Patricia called the meeting to order by banging a gavel 3 times. The room quieted slowly. "We are here tonight to address a serious violation of Meadowbrook Estates regulations," Patricia began, her voice carrying that same self-righteous tone from our first encounter. "Mr. Clay Thompson has repeatedly and flagrantly violated HOA bylaws regarding commercial vehicles. Despite being warned and cited, he has refused to comply. I am proposing that we take immediate action to compel compliance, up to and including forcing the sale of his property." A murmur ran through the crowd. Michael immediately raised his hand. "Point of order," he said loudly. "The board has no authority to force the sale of a property for a parking violation. This meeting should not be happening without a full board vote, which we did not have." Patricia's face flushed. "As president, I have the authority to call emergency meetings when circumstances warrant." "For legitimate emergencies," Michael countered. "A truck parked in someone's driveway is not an emergency." "It is when the homeowner refuses to follow the rules," Jennifer cleared her throat. "Actually, I need to read something into the record. I have reviewed the bylaws regarding commercial vehicles, and personal vehicles with temporary or seasonal commercial attachments are explicitly exempted from the commercial vehicle restrictions. A plow attachment used for personal snow removal would fall under this exemption." The room erupted. People were shouting questions. Patricia was banging her gavel and Michael was trying to speak over the noise. Finally, Patricia screamed "Order!" so loudly that everyone stopped talking. "It does not matter what the technical reading of the bylaws says," Patricia declared. "The spirit of the law is clear. We do not want commercial vehicles in this neighborhood. They lower property values and create an unsightly appearance." "Unsightly," a voice called from the back. I turned to see Mrs. Eleanor Hughes, an 82-year-old widow who had lived in Meadowbrook Estates since it was built. "That young man spent 12 hours clearing our streets so we could get to the grocery store and the pharmacy. My grandson has asthma, and if he had had an attack and the ambulance could not get through, what then? Emergency services would have cleared the roads," Patricia said dismissively. "Not until the next morning," someone else called out. "The city does not prioritize residential streets during major storms. Clay saved us." One by one, people stood up to speak. The Johnsons talked about how I had cleared their driveway so they could get their daughter to her chemotherapy appointment. The Chens described how I had helped pull their car out of a ditch the previous winter. Rachel Martinez pointed out that I had never asked for payment, never advertised services, and had only ever helped the community. Patricia tried to maintain control, but it was clearly slipping away from her. Finally, Michael stood up. "I move that we hold a vote of no confidence in Patricia Morrison as HOA president." "You cannot do that," Patricia shouted. "Actually, we can," Jennifer said, consulting her laptop. "According to the bylaws, any board member can call for a vote of no confidence, which must be decided by a vote of all homeowners present at a properly noticed meeting. This meeting was noticed, even if the cause was questionable. All in favor of removing Patricia Morrison as HOA president, raise your hands," Michael said. The room was a sea of raised hands. I did not have a vote since I was the subject of the meeting, but it did not matter. The result was overwhelming. Patricia stood up so quickly her chair fell over backward. "This is illegal. I will sue every one of you. You cannot do this to me." "The vote is recorded as 93 in favor, 7 opposed," Jennifer said calmly. "Patricia Morrison is removed as HOA president effective immediately." Michael Rodriguez, as vice president, assumes the presidency until the next election. Patricia grabbed her purse and her clipboard and stormed toward the door. As she passed me, she hissed, "This is all your fault. You have ruined everything." Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. Michael took over the meeting, and the first order of business was to formally dismiss all citations and fines against me. The second was to draft a formal thank you resolution for my snow removal efforts. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that, and I was surrounded by neighbors wanting to shake my hand and thank me personally. I drove home that night thinking the drama was finally over. I was wrong. 2 days later, I was in my garage performing maintenance on the plow when I heard a loud crack followed by the sound of metal scraping pavement. I rushed outside to find my truck tilted at an odd angle, the rear passenger tire completely flat. But it was not just flat. Someone had slashed it. And not just that tire. All 4 tires had been cut deeply, the rubber shredded. I stood there staring at my truck, trying to process what I was seeing. This was not an accident. This was deliberate vandalism. I called the police. An officer arrived within 30 minutes. A young woman named Officer Sarah Winters who took detailed photographs and filed a report. "You have any idea who might have done this?" she asked. I hesitated, then told her about the situation with Patricia and the HOA. Officer Winters took notes but did not seem particularly optimistic. "Without witnesses or video evidence, it will be hard to prove anything. Do you have security cameras?" "No. I never thought I would need them." "You might want to consider installing some." "I will file this report, but I have to be honest with you. Unless someone comes forward or we find physical evidence linking someone to the crime, there is not much we can do." After she left, I called Derek. He came over immediately, took one look at my truck and pulled out his phone. "I am texting the neighborhood watch group. Someone might have seen something." While we waited, I examined the damage more closely. The cuts were clean, made with something very sharp. A knife or maybe a box cutter. It must have taken several minutes to do this much damage. Someone had stood in my driveway in broad daylight and methodically destroyed all 4 of my tires. My phone rang. It was Rachel. "Clay, I just heard about your truck. Listen. My neighbor across the street has a doorbell camera. It faces the street, but it might have caught something. Her name is Deanne Foster. I will text you her number." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in Deanne's living room watching footage from her Ring camera. The angle was not perfect, but it clearly showed someone approaching my driveway around noon. The figure was wearing a long coat and a hat, making identification difficult. But then the person turned slightly, and I saw the pink coat. Patricia. The video showed her crouching by each tire, working quickly. The quality was not high enough to see exactly what she was doing, but combined with the damage to my truck, the implication was clear. "I am sending this to your phone," Deanne said, her face grim. "This is not okay. No matter what disagreement you had with her, you do not destroy someone's property." I called Officer Winters back. She returned an hour later, watched the video, and nodded slowly. "That is good enough for me to bring her in for questioning. Can you email me that video file?" "Already done," Deanne said. 3 hours later, Derek called me. "Did you hear? The police arrested Patricia. She is being charged with criminal mischief and vandalism." That was fast. Apparently, she confessed, started ranting about how you had ruined her life and destroyed the HOA and you deserved to have your truck destroyed. The officer said she showed no remorse at all. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I had to replace all 4 tires, which cost me nearly $800. Patricia was arraigned and released on bail. Her lawyer entered a not guilty plea despite her confession, and a court date was set for 2 months out. The HOA held an emergency election, and Michael was officially voted in as president. One of his first acts was to propose a new bylaw explicitly allowing snow removal equipment and thanking homeowners who helped the community during winter storms. It passed unanimously. I started to relax, thinking the worst was behind me. Then I received a letter from Patricia's attorney. She was suing me for defamation, claiming I had orchestrated a conspiracy to remove her from the HOA and had falsely accused her of vandalism. She was seeking $50,000 in damages. I called a lawyer. His name was Thomas Brennan, and he specialized in both HOA disputes and civil litigation. I spent 2 hours in his office going over everything that had happened. "This is a nuisance lawsuit," he said finally. "She has no case whatsoever. You cannot defame someone by reporting a crime they actually committed, but we will still have to respond and it will cost you money to defend." "How much?" "I will need a $5,000 retainer to start. Could end up being more if she really pushes this." I felt sick. Even though Patricia was clearly in the wrong, she could still cost me thousands of dollars in legal fees. "There is another option," Thomas said. "We could countersue for malicious prosecution and abuse of process. If we win, you could recover your legal fees and potentially additional damages." "Do it." The legal battle stretched on for months. Patricia's criminal case went to trial first. I had to testify, describing the HOA dispute and identifying her in the video. Her defense attorney tried to argue that the video was not clear enough for a positive identification, but the pink coat was distinctive, and several neighbors testified that they had only ever seen Patricia wearing it. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail, suspended pending 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and restitution to me for the cost of the tires, plus punitive damages. Total amount was just over $2,000. The civil lawsuit fell apart after the criminal conviction. Patricia's attorney withdrew, and she could not find anyone else willing to take the case. Thomas filed a motion for summary judgment, which the judge granted. He also awarded me attorney fees and sanctions against Patricia for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Total came to nearly $12,000. Patricia filed for bankruptcy 3 months later. I never saw a penny of what she owed me, but I did not care. The point was never the money. Meanwhile, life in Meadowbrook Estates gradually returned to normal. Michael proved to be an excellent HOA president, focused on actual community improvement rather than rule enforcement. He organized neighborhood cleanups, negotiated better snow removal contracts with the city, and established a fund to help elderly residents with home maintenance. The following winter, when the first major storm hit, I was ready. I had installed security cameras around my house just in case, but I never needed them. I spent the night after the storm clearing streets and driveways, and this time several other neighbors had bought plows for their trucks and joined me. We worked as a team, covering the entire neighborhood in half the time. Someone left a case of beer on my porch with a note that said, "Thanks for looking out for us." Another person left homemade cookies. Mrs. Hughes invited me over for dinner and introduced me to her granddaughter, a nurse at the hospital who shared my love of hiking. We started dating in the spring. I heard through Derek that Patricia had moved out of state, somewhere in Arizona where snow was not an issue. Her house sold in March, and a young couple with twins moved in. They were friendly, involved in the community, and the husband asked me for advice on buying a plow for his truck. One evening in April, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when Michael walked over. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure." He sat down in the other chair looking out at the street. "I never properly thanked you, for standing up to Patricia. She was making everyone miserable, but nobody wanted to be the one to challenge her. I just wanted to park my truck. You did more than that. You reminded everyone what a community is supposed to be, people helping each other, not rules for the sake of rules." "How is the HOA doing?" "Great. We actually have people volunteering for committees now. We are planning a neighborhood barbecue for Memorial Day. You should come." "I will be there." Michael stood to leave, then paused. "Oh, I almost forgot. We voted last week to name you the official neighborhood snow captain. It is not a real position or anything, but we made you a certificate. Jennifer is supposed to give it to you at the barbecue." After he left, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened. A year ago, I had just been a guy with a truck and a plow trying to help my neighbors. I had never imagined it would lead to legal battles, vandalism, and the complete restructuring of the HOA. But I also thought about Mrs. Hughes getting to her doctor appointments, the Johnsons' daughter making it to her chemotherapy, Rachel being able to get to work. All the small ways that simple act of clearing snow had helped people. That summer was peaceful. The neighborhood barbecue was a huge success. I received my certificate to much applause and good-natured teasing. I started teaching my girlfriend's nephew how to maintain a plow. Derek convinced me to join the HOA board as the maintenance liaison, a position that had never existed before but which Michael insisted was crucial. In October, I received a letter from the county prosecutor's office. Patricia had violated her probation by harassing her neighbors in Arizona, making threats, and filing false police reports. She had been arrested and was serving the remainder of her original sentence plus additional time for the probation violation. The letter informed me that she would not be eligible for parole for at least a year. I felt a strange mix of emotions reading that. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad that someone had let their need for control consume them so completely. November brought the first snow. It was light, barely an inch, but I hooked up the plow anyway and did a quick run through the neighborhood. 4 other trucks joined me. We were done in under an hour. In December, a reporter from the local newspaper called. She had heard about the HOA situation and wanted to do a story about community involvement and neighbor helping neighbor. I was reluctant at first, but Michael convinced me it would be good publicity for the neighborhood. The article ran on the front page of the local section. It told the whole story, from Patricia's attempt to tow my truck during the blizzard to the vandalism to the legal battles to the transformation of the HOA. The reporter had interviewed dozens of neighbors and painted a picture of a community that had come together in the face of petty tyranny. The story went viral on social media. I started getting calls from other HOA members in other neighborhoods, asking for advice on dealing with their own difficult board members. A HOA reform organization invited me to speak at their annual conference. I declined, but I did agree to write a short piece for their newsletter about the importance of community over compliance. January brought another massive storm, this one even worse than the previous year. I spent 2 days clearing snow, helping stranded motorists, and making sure elderly residents could get out of their homes. My girlfriend worked double shifts at the hospital, treating people injured in accidents and weather-related incidents. We barely saw each other for 3 days. When it was over, the neighborhood organized a potluck dinner to thank everyone who had helped. It was held at the community center, the same room where Patricia had tried to have me expelled from the neighborhood. The irony was not lost on anyone. In February, I received the final piece of paperwork from Thomas Brennan. All legal matters related to Patricia Morrison were officially closed. I owed nothing. She owed me money I would never collect, and the court had issued a permanent injunction preventing her from contacting me or entering Meadowbrook Estates for any reason. I filed the papers away and tried not to think about it anymore. Spring brought new challenges. The HOA board had to deal with a contractor who had done shoddy work on the community center roof. There were disputes about landscaping, pool maintenance, and whether to allow food trucks at the summer concert series. Normal HOA stuff, handled by reasonable people having reasonable disagreements and finding reasonable solutions. In March, my girlfriend and I got engaged. We decided to stay in Meadowbrook Estates, in my house with the big driveway perfect for a truck with a plow attachment. Her nephew was thrilled, already planning how he would help me clear snow once he was old enough to drive. The following winter was mild. We only had 3 significant snowfalls, and the neighborhood snow crew handled them easily. I spent more time teaching others how to properly maintain their equipment than I did actually plowing. In December, 2 years after the incident with Patricia, I received an unexpected letter. It was from her, forwarded through Thomas Brennan's office. She had been released from jail and was living in New Mexico. The letter was short. Mr. Thompson, I am writing as part of my treatment program to acknowledge the harm I caused you and the Meadowbrook Estates community. My actions were wrong and stemmed from my own issues with control and self-worth. I destroyed your property and tried to use my position to hurt you because I could not handle being challenged. I am truly sorry. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I recognize what I did was wrong. I read the letter 3 times, then showed it to my fiancée. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing. There is nothing to do, she apologized. I accept that she is sorry. It does not change what happened, but at least she acknowledges it. Are you going to write back? I do not think so. I think the best thing for both of us is to just let it be over. I never responded to the letter. I kept it, though, filed away with all the other documents from that period. A reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control and how important it is to stand up for what is right. The following spring, my fiancé and I got married in a small ceremony at the neighborhood park. Half the neighborhood attended. Mrs. Hughes cried. Derek gave a speech about community and friendship that had everyone laughing and crying at the same time. Michael presented us with a gift from the HOA, a beautiful set of hand-carved wooden signs for our house with both our names. We spent our honeymoon in Colorado, hiking and skiing. When we returned, our house was spotless. The neighborhood had organized a cleaning crew as a wedding present. There were casseroles in the freezer and fresh flowers on the table. That summer, I was nominated for a community service award from the city. The ceremony was at City Hall, and I was shocked to see how many people showed up to support me. The mayor gave a speech about civic duty and neighbor helping neighbor. I received a plaque and a handshake and felt incredibly awkward the entire time, but I also felt grateful. Grateful for the community we had built, for the friends we had made, for the simple act of helping that had turned into something so much bigger. 3 years after the incident, Meadowbrook Estates was thriving. Property values were up. The neighborhood had won several awards for community involvement. The HOA was regularly cited as an example of how homeowner associations should operate, focused on building community rather than enforcing rules. And every winter, when the first snow fell, I hooked up my plow and headed out to clear the streets. Other trucks joined me, a whole crew of neighbors working together. We cleared driveways for elderly residents, helped stranded motorists, and made sure everyone could get where they needed to go. Sometimes I thought about that morning when Patricia knocked on my door, threatening to tow my truck during a blizzard. I thought about the tow truck driver who took one look at my plow and understood what really mattered. I thought about the neighbors who stood up at that meeting and spoke on my behalf. Mostly, though, I thought about how a simple act of community service had transformed everything. How standing up to petty tyranny had brought people together. How one person's attempt to control and dominate had inadvertently created something better. On cold winter mornings, when I was out at 3 in the morning pushing snow, my hands freezing despite my gloves, my back aching, my eyes burning from exhaustion, I would think about Mrs. Hughes getting to her doctor, the Johnson's daughter making her treatment, all the people who could get to work and school and life because someone cleared the roads. That was what community meant, not rules and regulations and citations. Not perfect lawns and uniform mailboxes and vehicles hidden from sight. Real community was people helping people, neighbors looking out for neighbors, everyone contributing what they could. My truck sat in my driveway, plow attachment gleaming, ready for the next storm. And nobody said a word about it, because they understood. Finally, everyone understood.